material is presented in Endangered Splendor. But the book is complete not only in terms of the sites covered, and I'd like to add that many of these sites have never been documented or researched, and without this book would have remained unknown. This book is precise in identifying the preservation issues that we face today. It presents best practices, malpractices, and the possible alternate futures of revitalization and reuse. A compendium like this has never before been achieved in the Philippines. It's a story of the cities and the country's history through the story of these buildings. And beneath the context of the present city, the authors underlay Manila's rich past at different points in our history, how a street got its name, colorful stories of a building's heyday, shown in pictures and maps, drawings, and colorful stories of its owners. These are all presented among the broader issues of identity, interpretation, and history. If the six-volume Endangered Splendor were completed in the 80s, it might have been a 30-volume book because many more sites would have been around then. There were many streets that could easily have become a beacon, but today no longer. Heritage preservation is a long game, but if one is successful, it can be a powerful tool to alleviate poverty and shape cultural identity. Take the dramatic turn of Vigan, which has risen from being an impoverished town in the 1990s and today has a poverty level of 5%, well below the national average of 15. And ask anyone on the street the history of the town or of homes, and they will tell you proudly. So if we want to create alternate futures for our heritage, it must start with knowing what that is, with knowing its value, and with knowing where we are in the practice. Because we cannot protect or preserve what we don't understand. So I celebrate this Magnus Opus with you today, and thank you and congratulations, Dr. Zialcita and Erik, for this big piece of work.
Thank you so much, Tina. Thank you for that. And yeah, it indeed is a landmark publication. I agree. And you did mention vegan as an example of how things should be done and how heritage could be preserved and owned by the entire community. And we're very honored to have with us today Edgar de la Cruz, who is a vegan city tourism officer, and he has a few words to say as well. Mr. de la Cruz.
Good afternoon to each and everyone. In behalf of our indefatigable City Mayor of Vigan, Juan Carlo Medina, allow me to read his message to you all, and goes like this. First of all, I wish to congratulate the Ateneo de Manila University Press for coming up with a publication that features Manila's architectural splendor in a 3-volume series, The Endangered Splendor. The architectural heritage of Manila, 1571 to 1961. This written and photographic masterpiece of authors Dr. Fernando Zialcita, Mr. Erik, Akpedonu, and Dr. Victor Venida is what the public needs to see in the hopes of feeling the urgency of keeping Manila's story and its landmarks. As in other cities that embody their country's past, Manila's architecture should be preserved, not only because of its great churches, monuments, and historical architecture, but also the stories of people behind them. Splendor is such an appropriate word for all these grand architectures and the stories they tell. Manila is just the same with our city, the heritage city of Vigan. When it comes to architectural heritage, just like Manila, Vigan passed in rich tangible and intangible heritage. So let me share to you my city and its story. It's a virtuous example of cooperation between local communities to ensure the preservation of its tangible and intangible heritage. Even before its inscription as a World Heritage Site and its recent success as one of the U7 Wonder Cities, Vigan has already a strong relationship with the local community through engagement in planning and management of programs and innovative heritage management practices. The local communities and other stakeholders have been dedicated, knowledgeable, and passionate partners to the city as they work together in all aspects of implementation and development of heritage conservation. Vegan believes that development is only feasible if heritage is considered. Every step in improving the quality of life of the community must be based in heritage. Participative governance is one of the city's strategic themes. Veganos, as what we call our people, are empowered through their participation in the planning and implementation of programs and projects. This gives the people a sense of ownership that makes them committed in ensuring the successful implementation of the projects. With this, the city government has implemented the program entitled the Vegan Conservation Program as a tool for development. The program includes enhancements of several legislative measures that aims to safeguard and preserve the historic city, like delineating the core and buffer zones, establishment of the Vegan Conservation Guidelines, and the Vegan Conservation Council, the pedestrianization of the famous historic street Cali Crisologo, and conduct of numerous cultural mapping projects. Alongside this program, the city government also established the Vegan Conservation Code, which provides detailed guidelines for repair and restoration of our historic buildings. The Heritage Homeowners Manual has been published and distributed to homeowners to empower them in the proper maintenance of their historic properties. Cultural awareness and heritage appreciation are instilled early on among the youth. Publication and use of cultural activity workbooks for elementary students. With a vision and strong commitment of all the stakeholders, Vegan was inscribed in the World Heritage List of Sites and Monuments in December 1999. On January 22, 2001, the colonial status of Vegan as a city was successfully restored. Vegan is a city with culture-loving people and a community of stakeholders who upholds the city's efforts in conservation management. Heritage conservation is always a priority in the strategic themes when it comes to strategic planning for the city, as it is the distinct character of the city they live in. Stakeholders are also engaged in capacity building measures which enable them to repair and restore their houses by means that are compliant with conservation standards and are cost-effective. The Escuela Taller, or School for Traditional Building Crafts, was established in collaboration with academic institutions to train a pool of building crafts persons to maintain, repair, or restore historic buildings. There are also trainings for cocheros or drivers of the traditional horse-drawn carriages to act as unofficial tour guides for the multitude of visitors. The Kalesa rides make the visit to Vegan more fun, more exciting, and more meaningful and memorable. It makes the Vegan tour a real traveling time. Concerned government agencies are assisting local producers of handicrafts and service providers, like hotels and restaurants, to improve their products and services to visitors, and other capability trainings such as keeping and archives management trainings to enhance their capabilities to document historical records. Programs are also initiated the sustainable development of the city through developing economic, environmental, and social programs. These programs are implemented with the help of the stakeholders and the community. Among these are the River Rehabilitation Program, conservation of two-stroke cycle engine, of local tricycles, and adaptive reuse of historic or heritage houses and buildings. If you have visited Vegan, I am sure you have seen our McDonald's, Jollibee, and Max restaurants with the iconic ancestral house design. Several ancestral houses and buildings were also turned into hotels, souvenir shops, and other similar commercial uses using the adaptive reuse. Through the years, Vegan achieved good management practice in spite of limited resources. There was a well-integrated participation of the community and multifaceted efforts of the local government towards good governance and heritage conservation. Aside from being recognized as the UNESCO best practice in sustainable World Heritage Site Management in the World Heritage Convention in 2012, Vigan was also proclaimed as one of the Seven Wonder Cities of the world on December 8, 2014, and has been conferred with the seal of good local governance because of its outstanding and effective practices, including safeguarding our heritage. Certainly, Vigan and Manila are homes to proud Vigaños and Manileños not only because of its built heritage, but because of their beautiful history and warm welcome of their people. Modernity may have established their presence, however, the stillness and elegance of the past is still vivid. May this beautiful work of art, passion and love for culture and heritage be more than just a book a reader could admire. May it be a resounding advocacy to protect and preserve our culture, our history, and our heritage, for us to have beautiful stories to tell to the next generations. Again, congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. De La Cruz. That was a great message and very inspiring. We also have a message from the Mayor of Manila, Francisco Moreno Domagoso, who was unable to join, but he sent a message through his Vice Mayor, Hani Lacuna. Let's listen to it now.
A pleasant day to everyone. On behalf of the people of Manila, I would like to congratulate the men and women behind the publication of the book Endangered Splendor, Manila's Architectural Heritage, with the first volume authored by an esteemed historian, Dr. Fernando Zialcita, ably assisted by architect Erik Akpedonu and Dr. Victor Venida, as published by Ateneo University Press. Appreciating the fact that the pillar in heritage conservation efforts, teamed up with equally competent professionals, made this book a must-have for those who value the importance of the connection of the past to the present times. Since the day we stepped into office, it has been part of the agenda of the administration of Mayor Isko Moreno Domagoso to give reference to our treasured footprints of the past. Our heritage is what connects us to the past, and it is a part of a blueprint of an evolution towards a progressive city. In the city's growth and development, we made sure that our rich culture and heritage will remain intact and coexist with our aim of a country's capital with a strong sense of gratitude to its past. The city's tourism and cultural development plan is deeply anchored not only on promoting Manila as a premier tourist destination, but also on ensuring that our character as an old city with 450 years of rich and diverse culture and history remains. This Endangered Splendor, Manila's Architectural Heritage, is a book that will rejuvenate our interest to heritage structures in the city. The pictures are so vivid that readers would practically feel that they are in the shoes of the authors. The articles are well written that they leave readers in awe as they gradually build up not only awareness but concern to these valued structures of Intramuros, Binondo, San Nicolas, and Tondo. A concern that will enable everyone to be willing partners in preservation and have a proactive stand on issues concerning sustainable tourism development. Manila may have been one of the cities in our country that struggled most in the past, but it is through those challenging times that we have shown our true character as Filipinos who are resilient, and our ability to rise to those difficult chapters is how other nations look up to us. Let this book be a living proof of our resiliency as we take active steps in valuing and preserving our heritage. Let other people, local and foreign, likes these storytellers as well, as this book is a preferred formula to stimulate interest and further explore stories beyond the facade of these heritage structures. As former President of the United States of America, Theodore Roosevelt once said, the more you know about the past, the better prepared you are for the future. A statement that would speak well of our intention not to bury the past, but make them vital parts of our society's future. Endangered Splendor, Manila's architectural heritage, is only on its first volume. Let the succeeding volumes be a picture of our country's splendid past as we all desire for the whole of our archipelago to be challenged and motivated to link and value our heritage to what we are as Filipinos. As what we have been fervently doing in our city, we will continue to do our best and lead the way in valuing heritage as a driving force towards responsible urban development. As the saying goes, where Manila goes, the country follows. Again, our warmest congratulations to the authors and publisher of this exciting piece of literature. Let your advocacies reverberate to all sectors of the society as we all dream of a vibrant and progressive city. And with God's help, we will all succeed. Manila, God first.
Thank you so much to Vice Mayor Lacuna for that message too, and also very rah about Manila, which is great. Mr. De La Cruz, do you mind if I um, kind of take you off the screen for a moment while I speak to the authors? Thank you, and jump in anytime later on if you'd like to say something. Thank you. So, Erik and Butch, welcome and congratulations again on this amazing book, which is a must read for everyone, I think, who's interested in the preservation of our culture and really understanding more of our heritage. I just wanted to ask from a little bit of a literary standpoint, the choice of Endangered Splendor as the title is very interesting because you're talking about, I mean, it's a brilliant title, I think, but endangered obviously carries with it some kind of risk or something in peril. And then splendor is something, obviously beautiful or worth preserving. So how did you come about, how did you come to this title? How did you get to this?
Well, I grew up loving the splendor of particular sites in Manila. But as the years went by, I realized a lot of them are disappearing. So it's really endangered. The splendor is disappearing fast.
Erik, did you want to say?
That's really the purpose of this whole book, no? To point out that there's so much, but it is well hidden. You have to explore it, and it is disappearing fast. We have to really recognize that. A lot of the images that you see in the book are already demolished. No? Well, not the images, but the buildings, of course. Maybe 10% of what we recorded 10 years ago has disappeared since, maybe more. No? So this splendor is endangered, highly endangered. In fact, it seems to be accelerating at this point in time.
That's the other thing I was going to ask was how long have you been working on this book? Because would you have seen any changes, first of all, in the structures, like you were saying, some are disappearing, and also in the attitudes of the people around the structures?
Well, we can generally say that the loss of heritage is accelerating. That I'm sure about. When we started in 2008, we took a look at the previous study that was done by architect Mia Kimpo, a quick photo documentation, and we noticed that the loss that was occurring 8 years before was actually quite moderate. But in recent years, we have seen quite an increase of demolitions, including important structures, which indicates that it's accelerating. There's a lot of money coming in, there's a lot of development coming in, and that clashes with heritage preservation.
But isn't that the age-old conflict of commercialism, commercial interests, and heritage preservation? Is there any way where the two can coexist?
Well, as the example of vegan shows, heritage can generate income, can generate jobs. And that is the reason, very reason, precisely why we brought in Dr. Venida, an economist, to show that, in fact, heritage can generate employment we badly need.
Yes, because heritage is closely linked to tourism. Heritage can be a vehicle for tourism. And so how come we have not capitalized on that? Or how can we capitalize on that? That's probably the question.
Well, vegan has shown us the way. One thing is to make people aware of what they have. And then, of course, to promote. Because my regret is this. Heritage actually creates a halo effect for other products, not necessarily connected with it. I'm talking about fashion, home decor, food. The Philippines is in a position right now where it has to export more products in order to survive. It has to go beyond electronics and the export of human labor. It's we make beautiful home products, which unfortunately we cannot sell under made in the Philippines because of the bad image the country has. We badly need a capital city that has prestige. Unfortunately, over the past 30 years, Manila has lost its prestige internationally. It used to have a wonderful image before World War II as one of the most beautiful cities in the world, but that prestige has been lost. So Manila is associated with crime, with corruption, with congestion. And this makes it very difficult for people abroad to want to patronize our high quality products.
We have to keep in mind that foreign investment is also a matter of image. As Butch mentioned, for a long time the image of Manila was Smoky Mountains. Quite unjustified, of course, but that is the image that was portrayed. And we need to create a positive image for the city in order to attract foreign investment. Now, when you think about Paris, you don't think of shopping malls, you don't think of condominiums. When you think of London, you don't think of the suburbs, you don't think of ordinary office buildings, you think of the landmarks, you think of the heritage, you think of Big Ben, of the Arc de Triomphe, of the Louvre. Those are identity markers. Those marketplace, they create the center place. And that is exactly what Manila is missing and also losing at this point in time, because we do not have anything that is associated with the city. You cannot show a particular building and everyone in the world will know, this is Manila, because we have neglected this heritage. So we need to protect heritage in order also to create a positive image, a positive corporate identity that will not only boost tourism, but also direct foreign investment.
Yeah. But Erik, you raised a question in the book and you had an essay about it, about whose heritage is it anyway? So whose is it? How do we all kind of buy into it? I mean, when you talk about heritage, you have there's a kind of ownership when you designate a place as a heritage site. It's something that belongs to the world as well as the community around it. Now, when there's also the what's the word here? That heritage is something that only older people, richer people, the elite can be concerned about, because everyone else is concerned with day-to-day survival. So how do you fix all of that? Fix is probably too ambitious a word, but how do you create that sense of ownership of heritage for everyone in the way I suppose they've done in vegan, right?
Well, okay, let Erik answer first.
No, Butch, go ahead. That is.
Now, there's a new development I've noticed among the young. There are youth groups now that are clamoring for Manila's conservation. These are youth groups spring up everywhere. They want something to be proud of, and that is why our trailer is about what can we be proud of in Manila. This has been a spontaneous activity I've noticed over the past 10 years. Youth groups are aware through social media that other cities, let's not talk about Europe, let's talk about Asia, Southeast Asia. Other cities are promoting their heritage. And so youth groups are actually asking, what is it that you can be proud of in Manila? So some are even organizing tours around the city.
Yes,
If I may
in fact,
add on that,
Yeah, go ahead, please, Erik.
Social media has played a tremendous role in promoting heritage. When we started our research 10 years ago, there wasn't really much in terms of social media and heritage. New groups have sprung up pretty much like mushrooms. There are now dozens, in fact, hundreds of them all over the country. Just to mention one, Advocate for Heritage Preservation, which has been up on social media for only a few years, now has more than 30,000 members. And these are not only people who remain in the digital world, but also go out and actually organize tours. They are just one example. There are many others. And those are not only old people. Those are a lot of young people who are engaged, who are interested. So it's not a thing of the old people, definitely not. It's also not necessarily restricted to the elite. Not most of the members are also middle class. We also have working class members. It is really a broad spectrum. Butch, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, well, for example, I keep thinking of the Renacimiento Manila, which has created videos that try to reconstruct what Manila has been and what Manila could be in the future, using cultural architectural heritage as the springboard. They've created wonderful videos. So the youth are concerned. What is it that you're leaving to us that we can be proud of? Do you want a city that we can boast of? It's really the question the youth are raising.
Yeah. In the making of the book, though, how did you make? I mean, that's the other thing about cultural heritage is that there are value judgments to be made as to which monuments or buildings to preserve. How did you make that call when you were doing your book, when you were researching, putting the book together?
Significant is really on several levels. One level, of course, is historic, but there's also architectural for the most part, which we rely on heavily in this book. Architectural significance. There's also technological. In the case of San Sebastian, it's a technological achievement because it's one of the few old-style churches in the world.
Let me perhaps add a few words how we approached the survey when we set about it. By the way, before I explain that, I would also point out that this whole thing was a collaborative effort. No? It was really a lot of people who were involved in this. No? We had team members who went out into each and every corner, into each and every nook of the city, day in, day out, to look for each and every structure of architectural or historic significance. No? That team played the key part, the main work of this project, and this whole book wouldn't have existed without our team, Team 297. No? Also, before I proceed, I would also like to once again thank our sponsors, Ms. Nazalina Lim, Ms. Regina Coseteng, and Ms. Phyllis Caballero, who have most generally sponsored this effort. And of course, the Institute of Philippine Culture for being so patient with us. Now, how do we choose those sites? Well, we basically go by age, first of all. We made sure to include each and every structure from the Spanish colonial period. Definitely in the survey, not necessarily in the book. Then we also included all buildings from the American colonial period that we thought were of considerable historical or architectural significance. And then we had a very selective and very restricted choice of the post-war 1950s structures, where we only chose buildings that were really of outstanding architectural or historical or technical value. So this is how we went about. And then from that basis, we made a selection for the book, choosing those which we found were the most outstanding in terms of technology. Think of San Sebastian in Quiapo. Most historic, of course. What role did they play for Manila, for the Philippines, or even for a certain locality, for Quiapo or for San Nicolas? And finally, of course, architectural merits, beauty, aesthetics.
And of these places, how many are in use today?
In use, you mean in occupied?
Occupied, yeah.
Many unoccupied buildings too.
Many unoccupied, but in danger of being torn down, or
could be because the owners no longer stay there.
Let me give you the example of San Nicolas. In San Nicolas, we registered about 170 houses from the Spanish and American colonial period, primarily from the Spanish colonial era. San Nicolas has the oldest houses anywhere in Manila. And it also still has the highest concentration of Spanish era houses anywhere in Manila. Now, most of these houses are still occupied today. Unfortunately, many of them, in fact, most of them are run down. Most of them are overcrowded. Now, at the same time, a great deal of those houses in San Nicolas are also entirely empty because they have been converted to warehouses. And so you have two conflicting. On the one hand, you have overcrowding here, and on the other hand, you have vacancy because it's now a commercial establishment which just stores whatever kind of product is being stored there. So it's very imbalanced.
Butch, did you want to say something?
Yeah, that's a problem also because a lot of the property owners have left. They're just renting, or they don't even care how they're renting it because what they're renting out is being rented in turn. So that leads to deterioration of the property. So a lot of buildings in Manila are actually uncared for, unfortunately.
And how you went about it, you had to walk, right? I mean,
Yes, of
you went
course.
from place to place. And
Of course.
I think one of we were talking about this earlier before we started about the greatness of a city. I mean, Manila could have been a great walking city, right? I mean, with all those structures, if we had had that sense of conservation, and plus the position by the bay and all that. How I think a lot of it has been lost because of maybe progress. Our idea of progress has been motor cars and air conditioning. So instead of actually creating an outdoor culture in the past, we've all like gone into malls and kind of more modern kind of structures and stayed indoors, right? Whereas we're starting to learn now that being outdoors is much healthier for us and all. So hopefully there'll be a change. But why was that? Why couldn't we have preserved Manila? I mean, we talk about the war being one of the reasons why Manila was destroyed, but why were we never able to rebuild to the same level of glory, pre-war glory?
Well, there are several things that happened. One was actually the way we viewed history after World War II. There was a tendency to demonize everything from the Spanish period, and that made it so difficult to want to reconstruct Intramuros or to want to preserve anything from the Spanish period. The demonization. Another thing also was the fact that our educational system has been overly pragmatic. The teaching of art and history has been sidelined in our schools. As a result, we have, many of us, in fact, have grown up not knowing what to be proud of as Filipinos. I'm not talking only proud of in Manila. Let's talk about being proud of as Filipinos. Many don't know what to be proud of as Filipinos. That is something I've noticed in my students in cultural heritage. And I notice this eagerness to want to learn what it is we can be proud of as a people. That's one thing also. And I was in tourism actually in the 1970s. At that time, tourism in Manila was focused on sex. I mean, heritage did not enter into the picture. And yet at the time, Manila had still so many assets intact. So I think we need really a reorientation. But I think it has come, but it's a little bit slow because at the same time, we're losing many things. There was a question here about adaptive reuse. Actually, we should really think about how buildings can be reused. Because I don't mean turning to museums or hotels or restaurants. There are many possible uses for buildings. I mean, office buildings can still be reused as office buildings, for instance.
Let me expand a little bit on that, what Butch said. For example, this notion, you asked earlier, whose heritage is it? Is it really Filipino? There was this big question after World War II. Is this really Filipino? In the 1950s and 60s, serious, prominent Filipino historians promoted the demolition of the walls of Intramuros, arguing that they are not a symbol of our history, but rather a symbol of foreign oppression under which these Filipinos were suffering. It's this notion that whatever is Filipino must be pre-colonial, that only the pre-colonial is the true Filipino. Nothing could be further from the truth, and that applies not only to the Philippines, but to each and every country on this planet. Cultures are never pure. Cultures are always mixed, always. Sorry?
I just wanted to add to that. One thing we made it clear in this book is that actually Manila, according to British historians today, who are reviewing the past, say Manila was actually the world's first global city. It's interesting. That's a statement made by David Irving in his 2010 book on the musical history of Manila. It was the world's first global city because the musical currents from all over the world converged in Manila, thanks to the galleon trade. And then I came across this wonderful book by 3 British military historians, The Battle for Manila, Conafton, Anderson, and Pimlott. In the very opening chapter, they talk about what Manila was like before 1940. It was the city that was truly global, according to them, because Singapore, Istanbul, they connected Asia-Europe, but Manila connected Asia-Europe and North and South America. And they said, the tragedy of World War II is that, yes, many great cities were destroyed, but Manila was different because of its global implications. It was beautiful. And they said another tragedy is that the world did not know what it was losing with the destruction of Manila. And I would add that the Filipinos themselves still have not understood what has been lost.
No, I think you hit it right on the nail on the head. That's the idiom, right? You hit the nail on the head. I think also Mr. De La Cruz talked about it earlier about narratives, heritage being part of a narrative of a nation. And so it's also important in building cultural identity and national identity. And that's something that it's so fractured in our country that we don't, like you said, we don't know what we are, who we are, and we haven't been able to reflect or project who we are into what we want to preserve and what we want to keep and what we want to build. So so what remains of our heritage at the moment, what you've documented, are things that probably we should, of course, preserve. But we don't even know what parts of ourselves we want to project and preserve.
I think in this highly globalized world, we really should project. We should be proud of the fact that we have actually been at the epicenter of cross currents from different continents. It is something I think we should continue maintaining because it makes us prouder of ourselves.
I would like to share a little experience I had in Mexico. When I and Butch were in Mexico in 2015, we were attending an international conference in Guadalajara, and our topic was how is history, how is identity depicted in museums, in places where people go to learn about their history, about their culture. And it made me realize that in the Philippines, almost all museums are somehow connected to, let me say, political figures, to national heroes, to the Philippine Revolution, even post-war. But there are very few, if any, museums that actually discuss the evolution of Philippine society during the Spanish colonial period. Right now, there's no museum in the whole of Manila, not even in Intramuros, that gives a fair and balanced view of the cultural evolution of Filipino society during those formative 300 years. Which is a shame, because in Mexico, this is pretty much standard. In Mexico, people do not only look at politics, they also look at the development of culture, of technology, of the interchange of products, of ideas, of people, of races. And with this strong focus on politics in the Philippines, it is difficult for Filipinos to appreciate that colonization is not only a bad thing, but it can also have very positive effects. In fact, colonization is one of the drivers of global civilization, whether we like it or not.
Well, that's undoubtedly true, but you see the value of colonization here remains in churches, I think. Well, obviously religion is the one big legacy of of the Spanish colonization. And we tend to give a lot of importance to our churches. In terms of heritage preservation, you see a lot of fundraising drives for churches, for example, that have been, affected by earthquakes or damaged by natural calamities. But there has to be more. Like you talk about, Wall Street of the Philippines in Binondo.
Yes.
There have to be more than the churches, right? Our heritage than that.
Office buildings in Binondo, they reflect this cosmopolitan heritage of Manila. Some were built by the Spaniards, others by Chinese, others by French like the Bergniai, then others by Swiss Germans like Zialcita, and of course Americans like Odum. So Manila's heritage is actually quite varied in terms of nationality, and that is shown in the architectural heritage of Binondo.
We'll have to move away from this notion of only concentrating on individual monuments. Think for a moment about Paris. Think about Notre Dame de Paris. Would anyone bother to go and visit it if it were surrounded by condominiums and shopping malls and office buildings? No, of course nobody would. Because the value of historic cities lies in the ensemble, in the whole setting. And that is something that is often forgotten, that buildings, in order to really reflect history, to reflect culture, to reflect meaning, must be embedded into an environment that emphasizes them and doesn't diminish them, which is something which is unfortunately quite rare in the Philippines. In other words, we must preserve not only the monument, but also its immediate surrounding in order to put it in a proper setting. Nobody visits a church, at least in Europe, that is surrounded by shopping malls.
Well, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but Singapore also was going that way in the beginning, that whole modernization drive, until they realized they're destroying their heritage, really. And now there's been a big push towards preserving that. And so hopefully we could do something like that without too much.
Yeah, actually what I'm dreaming of is at least we could preserve some corridors. Some corridors in Binondo, some corridors in San Nicolas and other districts where the architectural presence is still clear. I'm thinking, for example, about Shanghai. Shanghai, was brutally colonized by the Western imperialists in the first half of the 20th century. That is why the Communist Party was born there. But guess what? They preserved the Bund, the very symbol of Western imperialism, because Shanghai wants to project itself as the financial capital of Asia. So they've preserved a symbol of Western imperialism, but turned it around into a sign pointing towards when China can become the financial center. They've also conserved a corridor, for example, like Xintiandi, which is really just buildings from the 1930s, and made them made this whole ensemble wonderfully walkable, plenty of galleries and restaurants.
No, for sure. Now, speaking of everything that involves heritage in the Philippines, I think because of political or whatever economic interest, always borders on controversy. So I think we'll be a bit remiss if we don't talk about what's going on. I mean, the whole Parex thing and development, overpassing. And you start with Pasig, right? Pasig is your starting point for the book.
Yes. We have to remember what Daniel Burnham, the great American urban planner and architect, said of Manila when he was sent here in 1905. He said that Manila has three advantages not shared by any other city in the world. It has the Bay of Naples. It has the River Seine of Paris. It has the canals of Venice. If this can be tapped, there could be promenades along them, Manila would be second to none in its greatness. Well, of course, the only promenade that was constructed was Rojas Boulevard, but even that is endangered right now because of reclamation. And now, Pasig River, oh my God, the Parex will destroy part of it because it will cover part of it with a 6-lane highway. And I think we also have to think not only in terms of identity, but also climate change. Metro Manila is already an urban heat island, according to UP scientists. Very dangerous because that means more heavier precipitation, more flooding.
Mhm.
And the reason for that is because too much overbuilding, no more green spaces, and in fact, no more blue spaces. It says the problem in Metro Manila now is that at night, the temperature between the nighttime and the daytime hardly varies anymore. And yet Manila has three bodies of water nearby: the lake, the river, and the bay. Still, the temperature doesn't drop down as it should because of overbuilding. And now they're going to cover part of the Pasig. It's really a disaster we're heading towards.
Erik, did you want to say something? I know it's a very controversial topic at the moment, but judging from the comments here, it seems to be, unanimous hostility, I might say, towards the project.
Well, if you're referring to Paris in particular, the historical verdict is pretty clear. What is being proposed today, building over the Pasig River, is something that was actually done quite extensively in other cities in the world in the 1960s and the 1950s. Building highways, smash through city centers, building across rivers, across canals. Look at Nihonbashi in Tokyo. Look at the highway in Seoul. I forgot the name; it's quite complicated. I can't pronounce it here. In New York, the same thing. And what we see in the recent 10 years, that all of these developments, those highways on stilts, those massive corridors protruding, bringing traffic right into the city center, are all being dismantled. Nihonbashi will be demolished. Nihonbashi Expressway in Tokyo will be demolished this year. The one in Tokyo has already been, not in Tokyo, in Seoul has already been taken down. New York City has converted some of the elevated railway lines into parks, because these concepts are from the 1950s, from the 1960s. They are out of date. It's actually quite strange that a concept that has already been disproven, which are already being dismantled elsewhere in the world, are now being repeated here. The traffic problems of Manila will not be solved with more roads. There's such a thing as induced traffic. You build more roads, it will attract more traffic.
Agree.
The solution lies not in highways. What works is our integrated public transport mass systems. We have a wonderful asset in Manila, the Pasig River. It could be a highway for transport, but water-based. We had the Pasig River ferry. It never quite took off. We need to have more public transport like LRTs, MRTs. Luckily, a subway is now underway, which is a great improvement. Those are the things. Combine that with park and ride, combine that with local solutions in terms of local transport, maybe even bicycles. That is the way forward. It is not bringing more highways into the city center. That's an old concept which is discredited by history.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree with you. And like as we've seen with the pandemic, a lot more people using their bikes. You see bike lanes everywhere, and I mean, I hope they don't go away. Yeah, I hope it's not just temporary. It's not just only for now. And when things kind of normalize, the buses are all gonna choke. Really, I agree with you that the answer is public transport.
Yeah,
and walkability.
And walkability, better public transport, and sidewalks, for example. Just build more sidewalks as well. This seems to be a country, a city that doesn't care much for pedestrians.
It's pretty much it's a vicious cycle, because the urban environment is so dismal in many places. It is quite a chore. It is quite stressful to walk. Sidewalks are non-existent. Where they exist, they are being parked over. They are full of potholes. I mean, it's a hurdle run. It's not a pleasant stroll. It's a hurdle run. Now, people want to avoid that. Add to that the pollution from the jeepneys, from any car, not only jeepneys. Add to that the tropical heat, you don't want to walk. And people use cars, so car use increases and it becomes even worse. We have to reverse that. If sidewalks become walkable, if they become wide, if they become shaded with shade trees, if they become well illuminated, if they are not being parked over, if they're not being full of potholes, people will go back to the street. And the use of cars will also go down because now it is worthwhile and enjoyable to walk. But we have to promote it. Money will have to be invested to improve the general urban environment, sidewalks more than anything else, in order to reduce our dependency on vehicles. I would love to bicycle from my home in Cubao to Ateneo. I would love it. It's short, it's relatively flat, but I can't do it because it would be suicidal to do so.
Even now, you haven't found, there are no bike lanes that have been introduced?
Nothing.
No?
Nothing. Nada.
Actually, Manila was more walkable back in the 60s and 70s. I enjoyed walking around San Nicolas, Binondo, Quiapo, Malate. But then, when they introduced diesel fuel for economics purposes, oh my God, I stopped walking because the exhaust was just too strong, especially along Rojas Boulevard. I stopped walking.
So do you think that the advent of electric cars, if and when they do come to Manila, would that help with the aircon?
And trains, please, trains.
And trains, yeah.
Actually, trains is more important than electric cars. Electric cars may only move the pollution from one end to another, depending, of course, on how they are being charged. But if we use fossil fuels in order to charge our electric vehicles, then what have we gained? So the solution is really massive public transport, and I'm not talking about jeepneys, I'm talking about MRTs, LRTs, and subways. That's really the way to go. And to integrate it with local solutions, which will provide distribution locally. That is where jeepneys may come in, but not long distance.
Let me just segue for a moment to, we have a short homage to Victor Venida.
Oh, yes.
Talking about the intersection of business, economy, and heritage. I think maybe it's an appropriate time to pay homage to Victor Venida.
Sure, I'd like to read something.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is my tribute to Victor Venida. At the beginning of this July, Bobbing, the nickname of Dr. Victor Venida, had a lengthy Zoom meeting with me about the launch of this first volume. We agreed that this launch should serve as a platform for making the public aware of the urgent need to conserve Manila's endangered architectural heritage. Alas, that was our last conversation. Because of a series of health crises, Bobbing died a few days ago. Bobbing had a rare combination of interests. He was an economist with expertise in development issues like income redistribution through fiscal policy. At the same time, he was a heritage enthusiast. He loved watching grand processions like the Good Friday procession at Malolos, Bulacan, or the Holy Week processions at Seville in Spain. He wrote scholarly articles on the significance of processions. With his expertise in taxation, he formulated a possible fiscal policy for conserving landmarks in the city in such a way that both the state and private property owners could benefit. In this first volume that we're launching and in the other 2 volumes to come, Bobbing showed how heritage can generate employment and augment state revenues. He drew on his experiences abroad where heritage is used for generating employment. He obtained his Master of Science in Economics at the London School of Economics and Political Science and his doctorate in economics at the New York University. He had also been a visiting professor in France and Spain. His approach to heritage and development was very original, but solidly rooted in Philippine history and culture. For instance, he suggested a variety of uses for the newly restored San Ignacio Church in Intramuros, which is now owned by the Philippine state. Aside from serving as a museum for the collection of Intramuros administration, San Ignacio could be used as well for the Sacred Heart devotion, which, after all, started in precisely this church when it was under the Jesuits. A regular influx of pilgrims, according to Bobbing, would encourage businesses like eateries and souvenir shops to open nearby. Bobbing knew that religion, though otherworldly in its aims, actually opens opportunities for the worldly. For Tondo, his lifelong concern with social justice showed itself in his recommendation that multi-story residential units be constructed for workers. However, he urged following the examples of Amsterdam and Vienna rather than those of Paris and London. In Amsterdam and Vienna, working-class residential units give their occupants pride of place because of their attractive designs. In addition, Bobbing urged investing in applying design principles from traditional 1900s, 1940s houses. By the way, such houses are still plentiful in Tondo. To keep cool, such houses feature high ceilings, large windows with sliding panels, ventanillas, and canopies over the windows. According to Bobbing, if new residential units apply these functional design principles, they would encourage the worker occupants to take good care of them, as happened in Amsterdam and Vienna. But this did not happen in London and Paris, because the design of those units was just so bad. And finally, even these new residential units could become attractions in themselves. That was Bobbing, a brilliant mind full of ideas that startle because of their novelty, but that may be workable because they are rooted in our culture and tradition as Filipinos. Thank you.
Thank you, Butch. I think let me take this opportunity to maybe give a more in-depth introduction to the book. I think we have a book trailer here for everyone in case you haven't seen the book yet. Ars, can you play the book trailer? Wait a sec, let me just see what's going on. Sorry. Sorry, I didn't realize I was on mute. Have we got the trailer of the book? Maybe you can show the book trailer now, just after that wonderful background and the discussion we've been having so far. I think we're having some audio issues here. Can we maybe show it without the sound?
It was okay here.
Oh, okay. It was a bit choppy on my end.
A bit choppy, but basically working.
Yeah. Do you want to try it again?
Rather. Why not?
Sorry about that. Oh, so the audio was back on my side. Sorry, so it was bad on my end. Was that it? Would you like to show it again, RC?
Quickly.
Can you replay? If you're interested in the book, let me just add that Endangered Splendor Volume 1, The Center, is available at 20% off this Manila International Book Fair 2021. The sale period is until Monday, October 4 only at www.manilabookfair.com. You may also get it from us at Manila House at the same price. You can email us at events@manilahouseinc.com for more information. Okay, we just have a couple of questions here. We have a couple of questions to go through here before we close. And I think if that video didn't make you want to buy the book, what will? But I wanted to ask, is Butch around as well? What, in the course of doing this book, was there one structure that you didn't realize existed that completely floored you or awed you? And that became like, we must preserve this, we must, let more people know about this?
It's hard to think because there's several of them in Binondo. For example, office buildings there just blew my mind away. There's a particular office building which I liked, the former department store of Aguinaldo building in Binondo. It's so kitschy, it's so impressive in its kitschiness because it's an Art Deco building with 4 statues representing the Statue of Liberty, the Taibantawak, Mother Filipinas. But it's so inventive, and you think that is what I like about heritage. It opens you to the inventiveness of people in unexpected ways. If we think of heritage as just gloomy, preserving the past, but it's really about celebrating creativity of people who haven't been trained in architectural school but who want to express themselves. For me, that is what made me eager to go through this. I mean, the creativity I saw all around.
What about for you, Erik?
Well, for me, the biggest discovery that I did not expect was the Alcaiceria. The Alcaiceria in San Nicolas. We have to understand the enormous importance of that building. Manila really grew to what it is because of the trade that took place in Manila between the Chinese and the Spaniards. Of course, the Filipinos also contributed, but this trade is and made Manila. By the way, that is also one of the reasons why the Pacific is so important. But that's another story. So the Alcaiceria was the bazaar where Chinese merchants would sell their wares to Filipinos as well as to Spaniards. And it has always been said that it was totally destroyed during a fire in the early 19th century. And I came to realize that actually the remnants of the Alcaiceria still exist. An enormously important building for the development of Manila. And that there's even a museum dedicated to the Alcaiceria in the Pedro Guevara School in San Nicolas, which has been opened by the efforts of a very dedicated heritage advocate. It's open to the public. It has a lot of findings. It's just those small, unexpected surprises that you come across in Manila at every corner. Small things that you would never know if you do not actively search for it and look for it. Manila doesn't present its beauty, it doesn't present its attractions like Paris or London. It's not obvious. You have to look for it. It's hidden. It's hidden beauty. But those who bother to look for it will be richly rewarded.
Well, isn't that like the story of the Philippines as well? It's not always top of everyone's mind to come and visit, but when you come to the country, you'll be rewarded by, what you discover, I think.
Yes. How true. Except that we must make sure that there's something to discover still.
Very good. Good point. In line with that, I wanted to read a question from, I think it was from Gemma, if I'm not mistaken. Gemma, let me look for your question. How can we get LGU officials to read Mr. Venida's ideas on heritage conservation and the real estate developers?
That is a challenge indeed, how to do that. I was suggesting perhaps we should conduct seminars on particular parts of our book, because cannot tackle the whole book in one seminar. Probably a seminar on Binondo, a seminar on Intramuros, on Tondo, separate seminars with developers and city officials and businessmen. I'm heartened, for example, that a business person like Mr. Kevin Tan of Mega World has realized the importance of heritage by constructing this wonderful Chinatown museum and by investing in museums in Iloilo and now in Cebu, and another one that's supposed to arise in San Fernando. It would be great to involve him in a seminar like that so that people in LGU and in the business world can realize that heritage offers something.
Yeah.
We would like to encourage developers to also read this book and to take inspiration from it. Because instead of demolishing heritage and replacing it with nondescript structures that you might find in similar form in Los Angeles or Shenzhen or Canberra, to rather take clues from what is there and to be inspired by it. Take, for example, the racehorse hippodromes that used to be in Manila, like in San Lazaro, like in Santa Ana. Those were demolished. New developments took place there. Developments which are not particularly connected to the site. They could be anywhere. They could be here, they could be in Shenzhen, they could be in New York. And I hope that developers will look at what they find on the site, maybe preserve part of it, not necessarily everything, but part of it, the important part, and maybe be inspired for their development, for their shopping malls, or for their high-rises, or for their condominiums by what they find, and use this to develop the architecture further.
Sure. But it makes me wonder also, people who develop the malls are big real estate developers. They must be travelers as well. So they must see what's happening in other countries. And I wonder if they come back to the Philippines thinking, we could do this there instead of, say, building another mall. But I don't know what their thought process is.
Yeah, that's the problem. There seems to be a blind spot. They don't seem to think that there is something of value here. I think that is a problem. They don't think there's an a priori judgment that there's nothing of value here.
Which is very sad, what it says about us and, how we see ourselves.
Yeah.
But what you said something about the youth, the young people, you're seeing this whole renewed interest.
A segment of the youth.
Yeah.
Seems to be very interested.
About to say something about the revival of Escolta coming from artisan groups of the youth.
That was really something. It just was unexpected for me. So they set up businesses within the Zialcita building, formerly the Perez Manila building, and then they would have street parties on Saturdays. That's really great. That is really one way to do it. You have to animate sites and streets and buildings.
Yeah.
Animation is the thing to go because if you, building, not everybody can connect the building as such. There's got to be activity.
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, heritage, we tend to think of heritage as something in the past and dead,
yeah.
stagnant. Whereas it should be an ongoing thing. It's fluid,
Correct.
it's alive,
Yeah.
it lives on. So we should live with it, around, with heritage, surrounded by our heritage.
Actually,
When you go, sorry, when you go to London, when you go to Rome, when you go to Paris, when you go to Barcelona, when you go to Lisbon, those are very old cities. Do they look old? Do they look like a museum? Of course they don't. They're alive, they're attractive, they're lively. Because there is this notion that old is dusty, and for a city to be vibrant, it has to have everything new. Nothing could be further from the truth. Heritage and new development go very well together, provided that the developers take clues from what they find in terms of heritage and react to it. We have discussed this in the chapter New Meets Old, giving some ideas on how modern buildings, even avant-garde buildings, can be successfully integrated into old historic soundscapes rather than diminishing, even making them more attractive. But one has to react to the heritage there and not just wipe it off the table and replace it with generic stuff.
I think one of the more successful examples of adaptive use, I would say, in recent times at least, and I think the architects here as well, Dominic Galicia, is the repurposing of that building, right? Which building was that?
Natural History, Museum of Natural History.
Yes, but what was it before?
It was the agricultural building, then tourism building.
Yeah, agriculture, Agrifina Circle, and it's amazing. It's beautifully done, and it's a great space, and and Dominic is in the audience. So congratulations, Dominic, for showing us that it can be done. And also, there's a comment here from Gemma Araneta saying, Mr. Cobanquiat preserved the 100-year-old Shields building on Calle das Marinas instead of demolishing it. So that's also encouraging. And also, on a side note, Mayor Lim encouraged redevelopment of Escolta in 2011. And architect Dominic Galicia and Gemma Araneta both met with the Escolta Commercial Association every Thursday at the Samanillo building.
It's true.
Thanks, Gemma. Thanks, Gemma, for those insights. And yeah, we have a lot of comments here about this. The Chinatown Museum is at the Spanish era bridge of Masic. Is it right? Did I say it right?
But there were these ruins, the Masic, which was the building that housed the infantry. Unfortunately, it was torn down. This building was built over it.
So Mega World, it later became the quarters of the Spanish army in Tondo. And that's the other thing that was quite new to me, was how you said Tondo was a flourishing, prosperous community before.
Yes.
With mansions. And how did it become the slum now that it's known,
In fact, just to make people aware, there's in fact that street in Tondo which says it all, Gagalangin. In other words, the street of the respectable people.
Like from Kagalang-galang.
Kagalang-galang, yeah. And it was in that street actually where Virgie Moreno and her brother Pitoy Moreno grew up, because their house still stands. In fact, it's documented in the book. What happened in Tondo was this: after World War II, when the port area developed, there was a lot of onrush of migrants from all over the provinces looking for jobs. But unfortunately, there was no housing plan for them in Manila. So squatters just mushroomed everywhere. So unfortunately, Tondo, being close to the harbor, became increasingly slummy. It's really the city's fault. There was no housing project for the poor, as well as no alternative opportunities for them in the city. But actually, part of Tondo is still quite interesting, quite fascinating. Yeah.
And before we close, you want to tell us anything about your book 2 and 3, what we can expect and when we can expect?
Yeah, book 2 is about the south. It's south of the Pasig. It's about Ermita, Malate, Paco, uh, Pandacan, Singalong, San Andres, and above all, Santa Ana. Part 3 is the north. It features Santa Cruz, Quiapo, San Miguel, and Sampaloc, Santa Mesa. It also includes the cemeteries, by the way. Erik has a very long chapter on the cemeteries, North Cemetery and the Chinese cemetery. When will these books come out? Well, they're in the press right now. They should come out within the next year, I hope.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a 3-part series.
Yes.
There will
And,
be another 3-part series afterwards. Once we are done with Manila, we hope to also publish a 3-volume book on the built heritage of Metro Manila. That is basically everything within the National Capital Region except Manila City. Valenzuela, Marikina, Taguig, Las Piñas, those places where you wouldn't expect anything and which are also full of surprises.
No, I'm sure. So we're awaiting those 3. Well, now it's going to be 6 books, right? 2
Yes.
separate series, so a total of 6 books. I think we're running out of time, and I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you for spending your Saturday afternoon with us. And as I mentioned, you can get the book from us at Manila House. Please email us at events@manilahouseinc.com. The address is in the chat. I put the email address in the chat. And again, on behalf of Manila House, I'd like to thank our wonderful speakers for today and authors of the book Endangered Splendor, Manila's Architectural Heritage from 1521 to 1960. And of course, also for Tina Paterna for joining us, President of ICOMOS Philippines. And we have Mr. De La Cruz as well from Vegan Tourism Office who joined us earlier. Karina Bolasco is a publisher of Ateneo Manila, the Manila University Press. Karina, do you want to come online and just maybe say a few words before we close? Hey there, Karina.
My internet is really unstable. Been going in and out. Thank you very much to all of you for doing this and for this conversation. We keep producing these books, rigorously researched books, which we hope will really have an impact on policymakers, on the people who build our city, who run our city, who destroy the city. So this is the purpose why, this is why we put out all these books, and they're not going to be useful unless they really make an impact on public policy. So again, thank you to our authors, to Butch and Erik, and Bobby, the late Bobby, and the entire team that put this together. It's an amazing, fantastic project, and I hope it will really, really help us recover the splendor or save whatever is left of the splendor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Karina. Thank you so much to everybody who joined us today. Thank you again, Butch and Erik and Tina. Maybe let me close this, Butch and Erik. Can I just ask you to say final, few words about why it's so important to preserve, maybe like revive the splendor instead of keeping it endangered, I suppose.
Well, for me, I'd like to go back to the words of Emilio Jacinto. He said, kung walang pagmamahal, ang mga bayan ay di mananatili. What he meant by that is if there's no love, bayan meaning either country or city, will not endure. So I think it's really important to have pride, pride of place, pride of self.
Thank you. It's brilliant. Erik?
Well, for me, it's primarily a matter of quality of life. To live in an environment that is not only taking care of my needs in terms of food, shelter, protection, but also is stimulating. An environment that challenges me intellectually, but that also gives me a sense of place, gives me the feeling of part of a historic continuitum, of which I'm part, a very small part, of course, and which existed before me and which will continue to exist after me. It's something that makes us human. It is so important that we are stimulated, that we are expressing who we are, what we are, where we came from, and that is part of heritage. It makes life better, much better. And that's why we should preserve it and promote it.
Thank you. Those are great words. Tina, maybe I'll ask you to close today since you're in the, this is your field as well, the cataloging, the identifying, cataloging, preserving, and this, educating about advocating for cultural preservation, heritage preservation.
Thanks, Bambina. Just a big congratulations. All of us at ICOMOS have been here, helped out where we could, and we've witnessed over a decade the birth now of this magnum opus. I know many of us are here, and many of us have gotten the book. Many of us are glad we have the book. It's really such an incredible resource, not only as and for many things, not for that gap in your head that you don't know X, it will be in this book. And I filled in so many X's in my head in this last week with this book. So thank you and congratulations to Erik and Dr. Z. We look forward to the rest of the 5.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, we are looking forward to the 5 to come. Just to remind to everyone, Manila House is open to members and guests. Please bring your vaccination cards. We're open. We welcome you as long as you're fully vaccinated. Our staff has been fully vaccinated as well. And as you know, we have outdoor areas to keep everyone safe. And our takeaway service is open to the public, of course. So just give us a call anytime, 0917-816-3685 to place your orders. And on that note, thank you very much once more for joining us. And at Manila House, we also advocate for the preservation of culture and heritage, and we do what we can to be a part of this conversation every chance we get. So thank you so much for being here today and joining this conversation. And we'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Bambina.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Marina.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.